And welcome. We have our session with Carolina Giammetta, who we're going to be interviewed by Tim Smith of the Actors Workshop. She is an award-winning writer-director known for her in-depth work with connection with actors, creative visual storytelling, and has a unique energy and collaboration which she brings on set. We really hope that you're going to have a really good time with this session. I think it's going to be quite insightful. We also know, as you're probably already hearing, that we'd love you to share your week. So please be taking pictures. And if you can do it on social media accounts with hashtag IW22 and tag in Confetti, whether it's on Instagram or Twitter, you can win £50 Amazon voucher. I know, right? I want one. So yeah, do not hesitate. Please put them up. Don't forget as well that there are still some sessions you can book. So if you go onto the website iw.confetti.ac.uk, you can make sure you can still sign up. Please be sure you're using your Confetti or NTU email when you're doing that to get on things like masterclasses, on-demand stuff, etc. Just to kind of go and clarify one last thing, in case of an event or a fire, please be sure that you are making your way to the nearest fire exit, which goes to the corner of Brook Street, which is sort of the right of the building. So please be sure you're there. Hopefully we'll not have to go to that case. And finally, obviously, if you're currently, actually, all that sorted out. But yeah, that's all should be it, really. Now, before we let them on, we've got a couple of clips to play. We've got our little promo, followed by a lovely little trailer to play through. So thank you guys very much and enjoy the rest of the session.
Where will you be studying this September? So, where will you be studying this September?
One of our children has gone missing.
Nothing is as it seems.
If you know anything about where Alex Boyd was, don't keep it to yourselves.
Nothing is as it seems.
My son is missing, and we just want him back. Please.
Are you worried about something? I didn't find the kids in the park. I found them by the woods. Did you two see him today when you were out?
Nothing is as it seems.
Ben's fine. You haven't raised a monster.
Must be terrified. Suddenly the world is dangerous.
I'm Detective Sergeant Parks.
Nothing is as it seems.
Brand new thriller, Hollington Drive, this September on ITV and ITV Hub.
Hello.
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much. Welcome, Carolina. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. I'm good.
Brilliant. Do you want to provide a bit of context over
About
why we
Velocity.
showed those two clips specifically?
Well, I think the Confetti promo, because I directed that, and you're part of Confetti, so I just thought it was quite fun for you to see that. And quite often, you don't, as a director, you don't get a chance to do commercials and drama and film all at the same time. So this was kind of a part of my commercials reel, really. And Hollington Drive was the last 4-part drama that I did that was out just before Christmas. So as it's my latest work, I thought it'd be quite good for you to see the trailer. Don't know if you actually saw it on ITV when it was out.
It was out last September, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Well, it's fantastic to see you all here. We're going to come to you at different parts of this chat. It's going to be a bit informal, so we might put the lights up. There's a microphone being passed around, is there? We've got a microphone out there somewhere. Brilliant. And just so we know exactly what time to finish, what time are you going to tell us that we need to wrap up by? That's what we need to know. As soon as you know that, Rose? 1:30. There we go. So we don't get cut short. Now let's just have. Can we have the lights up very quickly, just so we can see who we're dealing with? Oh, look at all. Hello, how you doing? You know, recognise some of you. Hi, waving at us. So let's have a show of hands. Oh, Ethan, how are you? Ethan was doing some directing on Monday. Put your hands up if you're a director. If you want to go into directing, yeah. So a decent number. How about other areas of crew? What other sort of roles in the industry do you want to go into? And shout them out.
Who wants to be a DOP?
DOPs in the house. DOPs in the house. A few. Art department. Yeah, a few. Sound. Yes. Give me a boom.
Writers.
What was that one? Writers.
Writers.
Yeah.
Any composers?
Actors, few of them as well, dear.
Great.
What about, did we say post-production? Editors, VFX? So good mixture then.
Very good, okay.
So we'll just come to you. If you've got questions, then start waving at us and we'll put the lights up and come to you. But it might be good for us to just get a sense of how did this all begin? We've just seen an amazing TV 4-part that you directed. We're going to look at a lot of other clips that of stuff that you've been involved in. So how do you get from being Nottingham based? Yeah, you went to the television workshop. You started off acting. How do you get from there to directing 4-part dramas on TV?
So when I don't know if you know about the TV workshop in Nottingham, but I was in the original group. And it was because Central Studios had been built here. They wanted a pool of young actors that they could just pick to do children's TV. So I think I was 13 when I auditioned for that. And some great actors have come out of that. Sam Morton, Joe Dempsey, Joel Cole, loads of brilliant actors. And it was great because we were doing plays every week, but we also went to Central Studios and did children's TV. So quite from a young age, I got used to being on set and I knew the roles of what people did and I knew how things were made and I knew about timings and I knew the technical side of it from, being 13, 14. So then when I went to college, I did A-level drama and then went on to drama school. So I trained as an actor. And it was really funny because when I went to the arts educational schools in London, and it was brilliant to get acting training. I think that even if I'd have gone straight into directing, that was such a brilliant thing for me as a director to know how actors work and to know how actors feel and to know all the problems that actors have and how vulnerable it is and how hard it is. But during that time, the National Film and TV School did an exchange with us where we went over to do some of their films and they came over to the drama school to learn how to work with actors. And I just remember being at NFTS and really enjoying being in films more than I did theatre. And then when I left drama school, my first job was a Mike Leigh film called Naked. And it was kind of very improvisation based. And at the workshop, you do a lot of improvisation, which is great because it really makes you instinctive and intuitive about your work. So I kind of sort of carried on just doing sort of bits of TV and feature films, really. And I really wanted to do some theatre. So at the TV workshop, I'd won a couple of writing competitions for plays and half 30-minute dramas called Dramarama at the time. And so I just thought, I'm just going to write a play so that I can do theatre. So I wrote a play called Dirty Boggers and put it on in London. We actually came up and did it at the workshop as well. And it was all about two Nottingham girls that worked at this cinema. And it was great because the whole set was a theatre, a cinema, and we would sort of be acting on stage, disappear, come on screen, and come on stage again, which then was sort of quite technical, trying to work it out. And I just felt that I loved writing, and it did really well in London. We made some money, and the director was actually a TV director. We'd done a film called The Token King in Nottingham together. So he said, let's make a short film. And when he directed that, we wrote it and we were in it. I just felt like I kind of wanted to do it different. So I suppose early on, I don't know, the sort of directing bug was in me. And then there was an actress called Poi Fan Lee, who actually ended up being one of the Teletubbies. But she was part of the workshop, and she was doing a play called Short, Fat, Ugly and Chinese, and it was about, you know, a sort of a Chinese actress in Nottingham going to drama school. And I directed that as a play. And just slowly, I kind of, started to feel that I wanted to direct more. And then there was a competition called the Virgin Media Shorts, and you had to make a 2.5-minute film and put it into this competition. And if it got down to the last 10, then they got shown, you know, all over the UK at Picture House cinemas. So I made a couple of really short films in Nottingham, 2.5-minute films. They didn't get they didn't get in, but the third one that I did, called Man Up, did. And then I worked a lot with Spool, who were really supportive for me. So my first sort of commission short was called Papa, and it was funded by EM Media, which was a funding body here at the time, and made by Spool, and produced by Penny Linfield, who's just sitting down there. And that did well. It won some awards, and then I did a Film London short called I Don't Care, which was totally, again, drama, where my other shorts were comedy. So my really short shorts were sort of comedy, and the longer ones were just more drama. And again, they did really well. And from there, Spool at the time were making 27 short films for the National Civil War Centre in Newark, and they were made to be screened in this bespoke cinema there. And that was my film school, really, because it was like a 4 or 5 week shoot. We had 2 cameras, we had professional crew. It was shot by Alfie Biddle, and we got 100 actors, local and from London. Some well-known actors were in it. And it was nominated for an RTS award, a regional RTS award. And The People at Doctors, which is a daytime show that I'm sure none of you watch, that's where a lot of directors start off in television. And it's a silly place to start off because it's one of the hardest jobs to do. You're shooting sort of 25 pages a day with 2 cameras, and it's such a rampant schedule. And I did a couple of doctors, and what was really important to me was to make them look as good as they could and try and make them cinematic, which is really hard when you're shooting that fast. But they did really well, my episodes, and they asked me to do a 2-parter. And so I did a 2-parter for Doctors, which led on to Casualty, and me getting Casualty, which was my first sort of primetime gig. And then there was a new daytime show called Shakespeare and Hathaway with Mark Benton and Joe Joyner. And that was coming in, and I was asked with another director, Piotr, to set up that show. So that was, again, sort of fluffy, sort of comedy crime, which led to Agatha Raisin, and also Vera, which is a Sunday night show with Brenda Blethyn, which has been going for a long time. But what was brilliant about Vera is that it gives opportunity to directors to do a 90-minute feature, because all the programs that they make for a year are feature-length episodes. So once you've kind of done a feature-length episode, and whilst it looks like Vera, every episode of Vera has its own kind of feel to it, depending on what the story is, and you only direct one. So from there, I got offered my first authored piece, which was called The Drowning, which we'll show a bit of that in a bit, for Channel 5, and it was the biggest show ever, biggest drama ever that had opened on Channel 5. So that led to Hollington Drive, which I did directly after that, and both of them during COVID. And both shows took, pretty much sort of 9 months to make. And now I'm about to go into the second and final series of Before We Die to shoot all of the second series of that. And that's sort of a big European co-production. So yeah, and if I say to you, and it's mad, but I did my first episode of Doctor 5.5 years ago. So that's all happened in the last 5.5 years. Directing, I came very much sort of later life.
Wow, gosh. Where do we begin? So you just mentioned about 5.5 years is where sort of TV sort of started to happen for you and ramped up. But prior to that, it sounded like you worked blimmin' hard to get to where you are now. There must have been presumably times where you thought, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? You know, sort of, am I better off with a normal job, so to speak? I mean, how did you navigate through those times?
So I think as an actor, you learn how to hustle. So you're constantly writing to directors, you're constantly trying to get your CV out there, you're trying to constantly get in acting work. So my approach as a director was the same, really. Once I had some shorts, I would look at shows that I really wanted to work on. I would write to producers, write to production companies, and sort of send my shorts quite a lot. And I never forget really hustling to get doctors, because I knew that was kind of a real sort of springboard for directors coming from shorts. And I hustled Mike Hudson, who's the exec there, for ages. And anyone that kind of I knew that might know him, I got them to hustle as well. And I got invited to Birmingham, and I went to meet him. And I remember in his office him showing me a shelf of like DVDs and links to all these director show reels that he still hasn't watched. And I just thought, God, how does anyone get in here? Do you know what I mean? I mean, some of you might know a director called Lewis Arnold, who's from Birmingham, and he did Time and Des recently, 4-part dramas. I was in his sort of grad film at the National Film School. And, he's from Birmingham, and he tried for ages to get onto Doctors. I think he first AD'd it, and they never offered it to him, and he's an amazing director. So, it was just the look of the draw. I think I knew somebody at EastEnders. They spoke to Will Trotter, who's head of daytime, and got through the door. But it was pure hustling, and I constantly emailed Mike going, please can I have a meeting? And then he said, well, you need to shadow another director. And so I spent another 8 months, not hassling every day, but every sort of month or so I go, can I come up and shadow? Can I come up and shadow? And then I'd say, I'm really available on this week. Can I come up then? And eventually I shadowed, and then I hustled for about another 7 months to go and to actually, shadow. And then eventually I got offered the gig.
So you've given us a little smattering of hustling tips there. Obviously, students here are blessed because they get opportunities to produce and direct and work on really sort of well thought out, well developed short films as part of their course. You were doing that as a sort of a vocation or as a sideline, and then doing the hustle. What are your sort of hustling tips when it comes to approaching people to get those extra opportunities? I mean, you talked about emailing and doing it periodically, but what sort of should that email look like or sound like? How would you recommend doing that?
So it's really interesting, because I now get loads of emails from actors wanting work, and it either comes through my website or through my agent. And you can really tell if somebody has seen your work. So I think that, and what I've learned about production companies and directors is that it's about being really specific about people's work. Like, I remember getting a meeting with Nikki Schindler up at Red Productions, because I'd watched the last 3 series that she'd produced, but I was really specific about what I liked about it. And even my first letter to Mike Leigh, getting the Mike Leigh film, I'd watched his films, but I talked about what I liked about it, about his work, and it was that they made me laugh and they made me cry. And if somebody sends me an email that I really feel, not only have they watched my stuff, so it's not like just going, watched it and I thought it was brilliant, I'd love to work with you, but if somebody says, the reason I like your work is because you do this and I found this. Everyone loves a compliment in this industry. It doesn't matter how old, and it doesn't matter how big they are in the industry. If you're really specific and you really compliment them properly and hit a point of something that you go, God, that's really amazing that you've picked that up from my work, they will take notice. I remember there's a director, really good friend of mine called Rob Savage. Don't know if any of you watched Host on Shutter, any horror fans out there? And he's done Britannia. He's a really great young director. I think he made his first feature when he was 17 and won a Rain Dance Award for it. But he did a really short film called Absence. I think it was probably one of my last acting jobs. And I played Paul McGann's demonic wife. And he's wanted to work with Paul McGann ever since he ever watched with Nell and I. And when I was with Paul McGann, he showed me the letter that Rob sent to his agent to try and get him to do the short for free. And it was incredible. Rob had really broken down Paul's career and gone, when I first saw you in this, I love the way you do that. You've always got, there's an edge to you on screen, you do this, da, da, da. And Paul just went, it was so complimentary. And it was so insightful into Paul's work over the years that he just said, I couldn't not say yes to this. So it's about being really specific, because everybody in the industry gets these general "I love your work" emails, but it's about being really, really specific about why you want to work with somebody, not just because you want to work. And half the time it is, I just want to work, I want to get out there, and I want to, earn money as a director. But it's about being really specific. What is it that you love about their work? With Hollington Drive, I'd seen Blood on Channel 5, and I wrote a letter to Jonathan Fisher, the producer, and Sophie Petzel, saying that I thought her writing was great, and and the reasons why. And she really understands family and relationships and female characters. So, that got me a meeting with them. But also about constantly sending your work as well. Every time you make a short film, send it. I've got a massive database, an Excel spreadsheet of about, nearly about 700 people, that every time I do something new, whether it's a short, whether it's a TV series, I write to them, and I try and write individual emails, which, not all of them get individual emails, but the key people that I really want to work with, I'll send an individual email to.
So it's brilliant advice, and it sounds like kind of networking, servicing relationships, sending in those emails that play to the specifics of the work that you're trying to get involved in. But it also sounds like kind of finding that mutual connection as well, like trying to find that thing that you share with a crew member or director that might build that level of rapport, because presumably then if someone writes to you and says, I'm really into this particular message, and you sort of connect on that, then you sort of think, well, yeah, like maybe we're kindred spirits in some way.
Yeah, totally. I came to it much later on in life. So, I'm not a young director at all. And sometimes when I go for interviews, I'm up against all the young guns that are coming out that have just made their first feature for 2p, and it's won loads of awards. And, whilst that, the industry is employing more female directors now, so I've got that sort of on my side. But it's still about making a connection with people, and it's still about, when you pitch, to really trust in your instinct and to really have confidence in your vision. I think that one thing in interviews, and recently getting really sort of quite close to some really big gigs, I know that the reason why I've got close isn't necessarily to do with my previous work either. It's that I've brought I read a script and I have to pitch exactly what I see, and that can sometimes be really right, and it sometimes can be really wrong. But it's better to be that than to try and pitch what you think they want to hear, because that's never going to be your vision.
Can you tell us specifically about any particular pitch, to sort of give any advice or insight in if they find themselves in a similar position where they're up against sort of pitching for a project? And do we have any clips of anything that you pitched for?
No, I could talk about a pitch that I didn't get after Hollington Drive. So Sister Pictures are a big production company. They did Chernobyl and Flowers and Landscapers, so really kind of big visual stuff. And they had seen, so I've got a feature film in development with the BFI, and the BFI, the reason it's in development is that they gave me money to make a short film pilot for it, and saw the pilot, and I've got a clip of that, and I'll show you that. And then they've given me development money to write the script. I've lost my track. Oh yeah, so they saw that. So Sister Pictures were making this sort of thriller, but it's got a bit of a quirky edge to it. A lot of their stuff has. Did anyone recently see Landscapers? It's really good. Just watch it as a part. If you want to go into this industry, it's a real kind of. It's really different. And it's definitely worth looking at that. But so I went to pitch for this show called Pack of Lies, and it's really out there visually. And I put together, you always have to do a sort of like a mood board of ideas and potential cast that you think might be good if it's a new series. And I couldn't call it a mood board because I just thought there's so many different ideas here. It was like a you know, like a junk book really of loads of different ideas. Now, I couldn't get to pitch there because I was in Wales till quite late. So I think they probably had already got their director, knew who they wanted. But they wanted to meet me because they loved Holy Cannelloni and they loved the thrillers that I'd made. And this was halfway in between. And when I went to pitch for it, I thought they could look at me and look at my sort of, you know, sort of scrapbook of ideas and go, this is all over the place. But they didn't. They sort of went, that's absolutely spot on. And if there was ever I did a pitch that I thought they're never going to ever want to see me again, that was what it was. But I didn't, the project's so out there that I thought to myself, how do you pitch for something like this? Because I've no idea what they want. From the script, you have no idea what they want from it. Anyway, they said it was absolutely spot on. And it didn't go to me, but it was between me and Rob Gillop, who did Guilt. I don't know if you saw Guilt. And that's very sort of comedy meets thriller. So I totally get why they gave it to him, because I hadn't done comedy meets thriller, but that was a really interesting pitch. But it was great to be in with Sister, and they sent me amazing emails afterwards saying, you know, they'd love to work on something in the future. So you kind of, from all your pitches, it's sometimes I even go and do a pitch for something that I don't particularly want, but I want to get in with the company, and I've done a bit of that recently as well. And then you kind of get offered it, and then you sort of do something else. But yeah.
So we understand this sort of concept as a director to pitch for projects, do we? Or is that might be new to some people? A bit like going for like a job interview then. They call in a bunch of directors that they're interested in. They ask you to prep for that interview by coming up with ideas, how you might approach the project, and then they sort of sift through all those and work out who they want to work with. Yeah,
totally. So you go in and I guess a bit like, you know, an audition, but it's sitting down with a laptop rather than reading the script. If it's an ongoing series, then you'll go in and pitch, and it really is about how well you understand the show and the characters. So you have to watch the whole of the first series or something, or loads of, you know, with Vera, I had to watch bits of all different seasons to try and get an idea of who the characters are in the show. If it's a new series, then you go in with a mood board. You don't have to, but I always think it's really good, because a lot of people in this industry, even execs, sometimes they can't see what's on your mind, and it's really good just to show them that. So yeah, you go in, you talk about the script, break down the script, and directors out there, don't think that all execs want to hear about framing and, you know, and composition. They do, but the first thing that anyone wants to hear about is the characters. And if I'm interviewing editors, sound people, anybody, any of my crew, any of my HODs, I'll send them the script, and what I want to know is that they understand what the story is. And I mean, particularly with editors and DOPs, I want to know that they understand who these characters are and understand the story we're trying to tell. So, you know, don't even think, you know, if you're going in to be, you know, head of sound, that you just need to talk about sound, because it's not. What you're doing sound on a story. You're editing a story, and it's really important that you understand what that project is. Yeah, first and foremost, the characters and the story are really, really crucial. I'll spend about half an hour talking about that, talking about things that I like, things that didn't ring with me, and then I'll take out a mood board, and then I'll talk about, you know, sort of themes, atmosphere, lighting, composition, references, films or other TV series that I think are similar. And again, you're always taking a chance. You know, I remember pitching for years and years, which was kind of like a family drama set in the future by Red Productions. And I went a bit too sci-fi with it. And when it came out, it was really just like a normal TV drama, but set slightly in the future, where I sort of pitched Black Mirror. And I think that actually it would have been nicer if it had been a bit more Black Mirror. But again, I got down to the last 3 for that. But it wasn't, you know, she saw my mood board and I could see that it was a bit more sci-fi than what she'd expected. But you take that chance.
So it sounds like you're pitching to a panel of execs or producers, and then HODs, as you call them, heads of departments, or heads of the different departments within on a set, are then sort of pitching to you in some ways.
Yeah, so once you get the job, you go into, at the moment I'm in soft prep for Before We Die, and I'm meeting over Zoom, because we're shooting in Belgium. I'm meeting a lot of HODs now. So this morning on the train, I was looking at a series that was made for Netflix. That one of the a DOP that I interviewed yesterday. I've just looked. He sent me some clips to look at. So yeah, you pick your HODs as a director.
And we've got some DOPs in the room. So when you're looking at the work of a DOP, I'm assuming it's specific to the project that you're working on, but is there anything specifically that these up and coming DOPs in the room can do to sort of appeal to you in terms of the way they pitch to you to be part of your work?
Yeah, I think, again, get the script, understand the script. So I've got two DOPs, one that's incredibly experienced and made feature films and won awards, and one that's quite new, he's in his mid sort of 30s, and he's done, a couple of series. Now, I'm now, because they're my shortlist, those two, and it's really hard. Do I go with age and experience, or do I go for, someone that's really hungry? Neither of them have done exactly how I'm going to shoot this. So they haven't got a perfect example of going, I think this is what you want. But one of the DOPs, he's sent me some clips of his recent work, but he's talked to me and he sent me a mood board and he sent me some clips of shows that are very similar to how I've told him I want to shoot it, which suddenly makes me go, right, that's great. You're in my head. You totally got what I was talking about. He totally got how I'd want it to look. He totally got how I'd want it graded. He totally got the composition of it, even though he hasn't done any work that's, that's that similar. I've got to have a European DOP, so I can't bring anyone over from the UK for that. I mean, if we were in the UK, there's about sort of 5 people that I would immediately go and approach to do it.
Yeah, assuming you want to work with people that you work well with. Yeah. And for the other people in the room that aren't involved in the roles that we've discussed already, what is your sort of like working relationship with the sound department on set or in pre-production? How do you work with art department and sound as a director? What can they expect their relationship to be like with a director?
I think the biggest thing for me in prep is my relationship with DOP and production design. That's a real triangle because and location manager, because locations is really important, and then getting the right locations and or getting locations that we can design and build. When we did Hollington Drive, I found this derelict sort of derelict old sort of hospital. And we ended up building the police station there, the press conference room, the hospital, the interview room, and which was great because then Adam, who was the DOP, he was really able to work with our production designer on coverings for the windows and how we were going to bring light in, how we were going to manage the light coming in, and what texture we were going to put up at the windows. So it's a real kind of marriage. When I first saw this room, this site, I was like, oh God, it's really boring and flat and horrible. And then you get production design and your DOP talking about the things that you can put up in the windows and how we could build a wall here and how we could paint it. And suddenly it was more exciting than actually finding a police station or a hospital, because we got to make it look the way we wanted to make it. So yeah, the first relationship in prep is your locations manager. He comes on with production design, and then DOP will come on a little bit later, and then crew come on later. I mean, sound come on sort of 2 weeks before principal photography, really. They just come on for tech recce's, really. Sometimes, like, I'll show you the drowning in a bit, but sound came on quite early with that because there was recording live sound, and some of the sound effects that we wanted was really important for the show. So our sound department came on a little bit early for that.
You mentioned Holy Cannelloni and The Drowning, so maybe it would be good to have a couple
Yeah.
look at a couple of clips in a second. But just while we're on that subject, because this is your chance, ladies and gentlemen, and people, and theys and thems, it's your chance to ask and build a relationship with Carolina. So this is your chance to sort of pitch yourselves a little bit by asking an insightful or interesting question. Are there any questions about your sort of relationships and how you might build relationships with directors? Gentleman over there with his finger in the air.
Hi. What would you say is the biggest burden for you when you were starting out as a director, and how did you work around it?
Good question. What was your name, sorry?
Max Norris.
Get your names in, because, you know, when you're emailing Kaz, you know, you might want to remember your name.
Do you mean, when you say burden, do you mean that the biggest obstacle kind of thing? I think it's getting your foot through the door. I think it's that first gig. It's that first, you know, as I said, I came into directing quite late, so kind of going up and pitching and competing on schemes even. I've been on loads of schemes. That's a really good way of meeting. I mean, now COVID's, you know, sort of hopefully on its way out. Hopefully there'll be more events like this where you network and you meet people. And with Pizza Face, which is the feature of Holy Cannelloni, I've been working on that for years, and I've been on, you know, loads of sort of filmmaking schemes. So I knew people in the film industry, but I didn't quite know people in the television industry. So things like networking events is really important, because you might just meet somebody, you might just speak to somebody that can suggest you for something. So, you know, my in, for instance, with Doctors, was the head of Film London had worked in EastEnders for ages. So when she liked my short, she then spoke to somebody at the BBC about me. But I think it's that, you know, getting your foot through the door for the first time, and that comes out of meeting people. I think that, you know, yeah, of course, we're on email, we're on Twitter, you've got social media now, which is great, and people connect on that. It's really good to start following the people that you want to work with and find out about them as well. Don't over communicate with them as well. You know, I've got a couple of composers that have been constantly on Twitter the whole time, and it's a bit too much. But there is a DOP that has been slowly trickling his work to me, and it's good. You know, it's good, and maybe if the right gig comes along, I will meet him. But it's a fine line between harassing and just making yourself present in somebody's thoughts, or, you know, your name will keep coming up. But it's getting your first thing through the door. I think that is a big obstacle. Sometimes being a female director has been a big obstacle. I always say that being a female director is like being a female driver. You know, if you do one bad gig, it's because you're a woman. It's not because you just didn't get the gig right. And a lot of women that sort of do a show that isn't very successful, or, you know, they find it really hard to get their next gig, where a lot of male directors, they might do a gig and it might not quite work, but they'll just keep on working. And that is the truth. That's the truth of the industry. You know, as a woman, you get blamed for being a woman, just like you do, you know. If you do a wrong maneuver in a car, it's because you're a woman, not just because you were just dazing or singing along to the radio.
Thank you.
Thank you. Question next to you. We'll take another question.
James Tom, what's
Hiya.
that working relationship with the people in post-production, like the editors and stuff? Because I've always wondered how much free reign, how much like creative freedom would the director allow the editor to have in that final product, or is that a project-to-project basis?
Loads. I think it's really important. That collaboration with the editor is really important. So obviously your editor starts on the first day of principal photography, because they start assembling straight away. So because I'm shooting when they assemble, they get all the freedom. So that's really where you kind of, you know, you kind of laugh or cry, because you get your assemblies at the end of the day, and sometimes you just go, oh my God, that's been cut so badly. And sometimes they'll bring, like on Hollington Drive, I worked with a great editor called Matthew Taburn, and he would intercut stuff, he would experiment, and some of it maybe go, oh no, that's wrong, but some of it was brilliant. And I really trusted him. It's really important with editors that you start having a storytelling structure conversation before the director starts shooting, because editors can give you so much information. You know, like I know with Matthew, there was one bit where I was talking about intercutting this interview scene, and we had such a great idea of how we were going to do it, and we did cut it in the way we wanted it. It was a bit too, when ITV saw it, they said it was too arty and a bit too BBC. So because they're quite more mainstream. So it was a shame, because the way we cut it was just brilliant. I mean, I'm still happy with it, but I just think that it was a lot better that way. But we had really early conversations even before I started shooting, about how I was gonna how I wanted it cut, and therefore how I was going to shoot it. Sometimes with transitions as well, it's really good to have a conversation with an editor, to look at the transitions between scenes, because as an editor you can go, well, if you want that transition to go from that to that, then make sure you get that shot, you know. And there's sometimes directors you don't think that. I made a short years ago where I remember using whip pans from one scene to another, which is a thing that people use a lot. But I had to really plan things like that. So transitions and intercutting is something that's really crucial to talk to an editor about before you start shooting.
Just one more thing. How do you go about, because obviously you say the relationship with the editor and the director is quite in-depth, I imagine, before, during and after the process of making the film. How do you go about forming those relationships? Is it because clearly you mentioned how people can send you work, people can send you things. I imagine it might be a bit different with the editor because of how interconnected it would be. Would there have to be, for you personally, like a meeting in real life? Would you have to have a conversation with them like that, or could they contact you through a specific platform or something like that?
Yeah, I think that. So I've had some editors that have contacted me because they've sort of seen my work. I think when I interview editors, it's really how they take to the script and how they understand the story and the characters. But a big thing is how well you get on with them, because you're going to be sitting in a room with them for 12 to 20 weeks, you know, and you need to really get on with them. They've got to be your kind of person as well. It doesn't matter how great they are at editing, they've got to be your kind of person. And I've been really lucky with young and older editors, more established editors, that I've had a really good friendship with them. Sometimes closer than your DP, actually. It's really funny because it's just you two. When you're on set, you've got your DP and all your HODs and all the actors. But when it's just you and your editor, you're bringing that vision to life. You're making the film, you're making the show, and it's just you two until, you know, all the sort of, you know, the grown-ups can't come into the room and start changing what you want to do. But you're actually creating that show together. So it's really crucial. So if you're, as an editor, going to meet a director, find out a bit about that director, see what kind of person that they are, and bring that side of you out. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
That's great. James, yeah?
Yeah.
Good questions. What about in terms of the sort of VFX, other levels of post-production, colour grading, etc.? I mean, in terms of that relationship and your connection to that?
Well, you really should, with your DOP, look at the look before you start shooting. And that comes from what kind of camera you're going to use, what kind of lenses you were going to use. When we did Hollington Drive, I tried out 3 cameras and about 8 sets of lenses before I saw the look that I wanted. Once you get that, it's really important then to get a LUT. So you go and speak with the colorist and you do some test shots and and if you haven't got the money for this, if you're doing shorts and you haven't got the money for this, then it's really important that you get like a mood board together of, you know, how you want the color to look, because that can impact on design as well, and the colors that you pick in design, the color that you pick for costume. Not that it all has to be matching or whatever, but that you think about that before you start. It's really good to know as a director what you can and what you can't do in post. I think that, you know, whether you know that something is going to be visual effects, which is going to cost money, or if it's something that the colorist or something that can be done on, you know, in the online, because there's a money thing to that. Because you could be faffing around, I could be faffing around on set trying to frame up a camera to avoid something, and waste half an hour trying to, you know, following an actor, and there's a big sort of crane base in the background because we're doing a night shoot and I've got a big moon that night and I've got a big blue crane there. it's really important for you to know, can I just get rid of that in post? Is that going to be something that's going to be quite easy? So it's really good for you to know as directors, DOPs, what can and what can't be done easy in the online, or whether it's going to need visual effects. And I will show you a clip of something from Hollington Drive, that a stunt that went wrong, that we literally had to throw loads of visual effects money at.
Should we do that now? Because we keep teasing them with these clips.
Okay,
and that sounds like a perfect segue.
Okay,
in.
let's have a look at this. This is Hollington Drive, and it's the clip of the scene, so it's not the trailer.
Yeah, if you want to bring it up, Rose. I've been told Rose is the boss up there.
They're going to
Sure we got the right one.
identify him. How do you
Is
know
it,
it's
is it
him?
the other one,
Well, they're going
Kaz?
to expect
No,
you
it's
to
the other
identify
one.
someone.
Sorry.
Were you there that night?
I hate this drive. First time I made this drive was the night Mum died. Second was the night I came to get you from hospital after you.
Has something happened, Helen? Did something happen? Are you protecting him? Is that what this is? I just need you to understand. So please, can you tell me? I just want you to tell me. Please.
I'm sorry.
Wow.
Cool. So first I'll tell you about how that was all shot. So when you see them in the car driving, that was done with projectors. So that was in a studio, and I sent out a low loader with 6 cameras attached to it. One at the front, one at the back, 2 at the side, and 1 at the top, so 5 cameras, sorry. So it records, it films the route that you're going to do, and then you just put them on projectors and then get the car in the studio. And the reason we did that is there was so much driving, then rather than get permission to use all these roads, it was just great, just send a low loader out, get all the footage, and then I just took in turns with the cars in the studio. It was a much more efficient way of doing that. Then there was the actual footage of them coming down that road, and that was a stunt driver because of how fast we had to have the car. So the girls never drove that car down the road. That was a stunt driver. So that was mixed with intercutting. In the car, in slow motion with all the glass, I wanted that quite stylized, and that was shot on we call it a spit roast. So it's like a big wash machine, really, and you just stick a car in the middle. You can have your actors in there, you strap them in, and then we shot that at 200 frames per second, and it went really slowly. And then the actual stunt was done the day after the spit roast. So what happened was it comes down that road, and it's got a stunt driver in with the dummy in as the other character, so it's only got one driver in. And the car went up, and then it went back down again. So it's got a piston at the bottom of the car, and the piston makes it turn. And the stunt driver just didn't turn it enough for the piston to allow it to roll. So I'd already shot all my inside the car. I'd already shot them turning round, and then I had a car that didn't turn. And this was on the last day of the shoot. So by this point, I've got sort of 6 cameras on this. I've got 2 drones in the air. loads of cameras in locked off boxes on the floor. It takes so long to set up a car turning stunt. A good 6 hours of practicing, the stunt driver getting them really revved up to do it, clearing, making sure all the crew are safe, that the car's not going to damage anybody, or you've got an ambulance there. And it's Bickers do all the big stunts in the UK, so there's about 10 of them all there, big blokes, sorted it all out. And we only had one car because it costs a hell of a lot of money to do a car turn. So it didn't turn, and we didn't have another car. So, it's like, well, what do we do? We can't just find another 30 grand to do that stunt again. So they're all rubbing their chins, sort of talking about, oh dear, don't know what happened there. What happened? Well, the piston went off all right, and that was all right. And me and the producer just like, right, we've got to get that car to turn. Oh, but it's got the big cage in, it's really heavy, you're not going to be able to get it to turn. I'm like, well, we're going to have to get the cage out because we've got to get that car to turn, because otherwise I can't use the footage. And also the story is that the car rolls. And they were still going, well, I don't know how we're going to get it to turn. I said, well, can't we do it manually? Can't we just push it once you've got the cage out, because it'll be quite light? Oh, I don't know, we can't do that, health and safety. And I said, well, have you got a tow truck? Obviously you've got a tow truck. Have you got some ropes? Yeah, so they got the tow truck down, and they put all ropes on the car, and they pulled it with the tow truck, and it turned once. What this allowed me to do was get the cameras a lot closer, because I could work out where it was going to turn. And at one point it span, as you saw it, and that's because we pulled the rope and it spun round. And then we redid the ropes again, got the tow truck to pull it again, and it did another turn. So I got 2 turns out of it. But all the ropes that was pulling it were all in shot. So they all had to be taken out, visual effects. And I think just to paint them out, it cost about £17,000 just to paint that out. But that was a thing right on the spot that I was like, what am I going to do? And with the producer, I said, if we're going to put ropes in, have we got money to paint them out? And we just really had to think on our feet. And the execs were on set that day as well, because it was the last day of shooting. So it was just in that moment going, we've got 4 hours left until we finish. How are we going to get this car to turn?
Do you think your background as a short film maker sort of came into effect there? Because from my experience and seeing the work you've done, you have to turn your hand to everything as a short film maker and be prepared to kind of deal with issue after issue after issue. So do you think that sort of helped in terms of your approach to your work now?
Totally, because when you're doing your short films, you do everything, don't you? You sort of, you first AD yourself, you cook for everybody, you have to deal with things, locations, suddenly you turn up and you can't film there anymore. So you have to think on the spot. And I think that's a really good thing to learn. I mean, when we did the Civil War films with Spool, we had loads of animals in it, and you paid a lot of money for dogs and horses, and they don't always do what you want them to do. And you've got to kind of work out how you're still going to tell the story, or you're going to still make sense of it when something's not working that you've paid a lot of money for. So it is problem solving a lot of the time, and you're constantly doing that with your DP and your team going, how are we going to do this when there's a problem? With sound all the time, you've got your AD team that you turn up at a location and suddenly there's a big sort of, you didn't realise it, but there's going to be building works happening, or somebody puts a lawnmower on, or there's bells going off all the time that you didn't realise, and sort of producers walking around with a wad of cash trying to pay people just to shut up so you can shoot in silence. So there's always I always call them little daily bombs. Something's about to blow up any time that you're going to have to deal with, because at the end of the day you need to make the day. It's very, even on high-end TV, the budget for Hollington Drive for each part, I think it was 1.4 million per episode. And I'll show you The Drowning, because that was half the budget for Channel 5. So it sounds like a lot of money, but it doesn't go very far.
Okay, well, maybe we'll queue up a couple more clips then.
Yeah.
We promised to look at Holy Cannelloni. It feels like a good segue into that because you just touched upon short films, and it's a short which you are developing into a feature. The plan is to develop into a feature made with money from the BFI Film Academy.
Yeah.
Just before we watch, should we watch the trailer for that?
I think watch the trailer, then watch the scene.
And is there anything you want to sort of say or just kind of like give any context to it before we watch it?
No, watch it and then I'll tell you about it.
Great. The trailer then, please.
Mama, what does get sex mean? Oh my God! It's meant to be my Holy Communion! Can you shout?
Never let the boy do it to you, okay?
Why? What will happen to me?
You will stink like Omar Lydia's homemade Parmesan cheese. Oh, Maria, look at you. 12 years old and almost a woman.
Mama, what does get sex mean?
Go change your dress. We don't go to church till after lunch.
I want to keep it on. Is it something to do with getting married?
You're too young to know about these things. Now shut up and get the beans. Everyone's hungry. Come on.
Is sex to do with boys' willies?
Maria!
It's my Holy Communion. I'm supposed to become an Italian woman today. Dino knows what it is.
That's because he's a boy.
If you don't tell me, I'll ask God.
He won't tell you till you get married.
Okay, I'll ask Paul next door.
No, ask him. He's a shit like his mother. She gave me an infection downstairs this morning, just with her eyes. I'm surprised her husband is still alive.
If Nonna was here, she would tell me.
All right. Not tell Papa I told you, okay? You haven't even got your blood yet.
My what? What blood?
It's like when a boy get this
salami.
When a boy get this little salami and he put it in your pee-pee.
What, to wee in it?
Oh, you just like to wiggle it about a bit.
Does it hurt?
Little bit, yes. It's not very nice. It's bloody disgusting, actually. Never let the boy do it to you, okay?
Why? What will happen to me?
You will stink like Omar Lydia's homemade Parmesan cheese. Not do it till you get married or you get a nasty disease, all right? Okay, finish.
Why do I have to do it when I get married?
You only do it when you have to. It's for the men. They like it.
I don't ever want to do it.
Brava, good girl.
What's my blood?
Oh, Madonna Maria!
I said Paul could stay for lunch. Mum wants to know what you're cooking before I can say yeah.
Tell her the balls of a horse. Another cannelloni.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Thank you, Rose, and the team up there.
So that's it will show you the trailer for The Drowning. That colour is really important to me. So thinking of a colour palette and thinking about how I want something graded is one of the first things that I do when I'm looking at a mood board. So what's the colour palette for this? What's the look for this? I sort of talked about doing short comedies when I first started, and I'm Italian. I was brought up in the Italian community in Nottingham. So this has been kind of a long-going passion project for me, something that is kind of about my childhood in Nottingham as an Italian, and that's what the short's about. And the feature is about Maria as she's grown up into the 90s and looking back at, how her mum sort of brought her up, trying to scare her about sex, so that she wouldn't get pregnant, and how she has a real phobia about it and has grown up totally afraid of her vagina. So yeah, that's what this is about.
And as well as the colour palette, there was a lot of Dutch angles there.
Yeah.
So where did that come from?
A big reference for me was Amelie of how I wanted it to look. So just having a bit of a quirky feel. I think sometimes comedy can be overlit and it doesn't necessarily always become, if you think comedy films, they're always kind of shot in a very kind of traditional way, and I don't think they need to be. And I think that there's films out there that are sort of much more quirky comedies that have been shot really interesting. I mean, even series like The End of the Fucking World and Sex Education, being really adventurous about making it a lot more cinematic. So I remember The Wrong Man's coming out, and that just really gave a different look to comedy. I met Jim Field recently that directed that, and comedy didn't look like that before, and people have been much more adventurous now with trying to make comedy look different and not overlit and two shots and but yeah, that's a typical thing where I've been sending that sort of treatment around for ages and no one could see it, no one could visualize it. So I kept on putting it on schemes and no one could quite get it. And then the BFI finally did sort of offer me some money. So they offered me 50 grand to make a pilot, which again sounds like a lot of money for a short film. And it's the biggest award you can get for a short film from the BFI funding. But when you've got 8 characters and you're shooting over 4 days and you're putting people up in hotels, because it's all based in Nottingham, but we couldn't shoot in Nottingham. So I had to bring a lot of those kids, they're all from Nottingham, down to London. And then I'm working with kids' hours and stuff. So 50 grand, if it doesn't go far at all. And if I tell you that we were shooting on anamorphic lenses and none of the kit we paid for. We didn't pay for any of the kit. I got the crane for free because it was a guy that I've used on shows for telly. So I asked him to do me a favour for a bottle of champagne. So all the budget, all the post was done for free. The where she goes to the balls of a horse, we forgot to shoot that on the day because we were really running out of time. So we had to shoot that against a green screen. We took some footage and managed to do that. The opening shot of her looking out the window had a big visual effects job on that because it was raining. And then when we shot the outside, it was sunny. So Technicolor put in about, I think it was about nearly 20 grand's worth of grading and visual effects money. The wink of John Travolta and all of that cost loads of money, and we got all that for free. So the majority of it went on people's wages, which wasn't a lot. I think we paid everybody £100 a day, and hotels and food and locations,
The hustle continues.
The hustle continues, yeah.
Just while we're on the subject of short films then, before we go back to sort of the world of TV, is there any questions around short films? A lot of people here it's you again, a lot of people will be making short films in the room. So can we get the microphone down to this person at the front, please?
How much improv actually goes into it?
Improv?
Yeah.
I don't. So all my shorts, they've been written, I've written them. But sometimes it's good to sort of get the actors sort of improing together. I know loads of directors use improv and then create a script, which is what we did for the Mike Leigh film. But I've kind of I wrote my shorts, and then if people wanted to sort of slightly change them because something sounded better in their mouth, then they could do that. When I did I Don't Care, there was a real strong relationship between the lead actress and her boyfriend, and I know that they wanted to do some improv just to get them into the mood of something. So sometimes I can do that. Some actors hate improv. If you kind of go, oh, should we just do an improvised version of the scene? They're like, no, can we just do the script, please? So it really depends. But if you work with, there's a show that was made in Nottingham called Without Sin. And they met me for it, but I couldn't do it in the end because it just clashed with Hollington Drive post too much. But I met Vicky McClure and Johnny that are in that show, and they talked to me quite a lot about how they wanted to impro around this script that Frances had written. And I'm comfortable with that because I come from an impro background. So, if you want to go down the impro route, I definitely, as directors, go and do some impro classes, learn what improvisation is and what it means. It's tricky. Shea Meadows uses a lot of impro, but it has its own restrictions because you've generally got 2 or 3 cameras on it if it's impro, because it's improvised, people aren't going to be able to do the same thing twice. So yeah, it has its pros and cons.
Yeah, get
Thank you.
good at setting up your multicams for that.
Yeah,
Any other short film related questions while we're on the subject? At the back of the room there. Thank you very much. Just getting your steps in for the day.
If you're on a particularly tight schedule for something, how do you properly get kind of visual development ideas in? Because it can be quite time consuming to find specific references and really develop kind of a color palette and things. So how do you do that on a really tight deadline?
Do you mean for the pitching process or when you're in pre-production?
Like pre-production. For example, like when we do our short films, we have a week of pre-production. So it can be difficult to get everything to do with props and composition, all the ideas on paper and get them agreed upon.
I think try and do it before you start prep sometimes. So in telly, you get soft prep. So my prep for my next job is 12 weeks long and it starts on the 2nd of May. But I'm in soft prep already. So I'm already getting, I mean, obviously I've got my images that I use when I pitched it, because the second series is very different to the first series. But already starting to think about doing that in my own time, because it is tight. When I did Doctors, I think you get 2.5 weeks worth of prep for 3 episodes. So it's no time at all, really. And that's hard when you only just get the scripts. Do you know what I mean? So I think that in telly, try and get treatments, try and get anything you can before prep, because you're absolutely right. There's never, I mean, 12 weeks sounds such a long time for 5 episodes that I'm doing, but it'll go so quickly, because by the time you're recceing, you find the right locations. That's the hardest thing, because you're working on the script, you're with the writer, you're trying to get the script right, and then you're out recceing, and then it can take you a while to get your locations, then you finally find your locations, then production design are going to look at it, and then you and your DP are going to look at it. And sometimes I've started shooting without still having found some locations. So there's no way I've even been there with the DOP. I can't even think about how I'm going to shoot it because I haven't found the location yet. Do you know what I mean? Where you know that it's really key. The first thing that really comes to me in the first week of prep is getting their locations in. Because once you've nailed those, lots of other stuff, you've got time. You've got time to do all the other stuff.
Sorry, what was your name?
James Hardwick.
Thank you, James. Well, it sounds like if you've got a week to prep like a short 5-minute film, and Carolina can prep 3 episodes of a half-hour TV show in 2.5 weeks, then you've actually got quite a good deal there. So, Carolina, you sort of building up a repository of images and looks and styles with everything that you watch. I imagine it all goes into kind of a big pot that you then select from when it's needed.
I think it's really important. Like, I never get to watch the whole of a series because I'm always dipping in and out of new shows or things that are happening or people talking about things that are really good. So one, I know what's out there, but also to educate myself with different looks, and there's 2 resources that I use loads when I'm putting mood boards together. And one is Film Grab. Have you ever heard of Film Grab?
Tell us more about Film Grab.
Film Grab, it's free. It was set up by I think it's a DOP, and he asks for, you don't pay for it, but he does ask for contributions, and he does a consultancy thing as well. But say, for instance, if I think, God, oh yeah, Prisoners, that was a really good film. It hasn't got all the films, but it's got a lot of films. It's more film than telly. And you put Prisoners in, and it will come up with the director and the DOP and everything that they might have done that's on Film Grab. And then I can download really high-res, nice images of Prisoners that I can put on a mood board. And it just saves me going, that I don't have to go images from Prisoners, and then you get all the posters and all that. But you get proper high-res images of the show. And it stops me having to watch them or getting them or streaming them and taking screen grabs myself, which always aren't, the quality's not so great. And it's not so, because you're there sort of trying to do a screen grab, and it's almost impossible sometimes to get that specific image. The other thing is Shot Deck, which I absolutely love. That you pay about, I think it was $70 US, and every week they post new TV shows. That they do TV, TV shows and films, and it's just brilliant. You just go through. So say, for instance, if I'm doing an interview, if there's in a show, there's loads and loads of interview scenes, then you can put into shot deck interview scenes and like images of interview scenes from loads of TV and film just come, and you just collect them. You make a folder and then you download the whole folder, and I can do a whole mood board based on that. So it's a really good thing for pitching, but it's a really good thing when you're putting your mood boards together for your HODs. You know, and I might even put in red dresses, and suddenly loads of red dresses from loads of films and TV shows, images, and really nicely done images. And that was put together in lockdown by a cinematographer, I think. Yeah, Shot Deck is really
I'd love
good.
to hear more app recommendations, but Shot Deck and Film Grab
Film
sound
Grabs,
awesome. Yeah, definitely check those
for
out.
any kind of prep work is just brilliant.
We've got just under 10 minutes left, so should we line up another clip? And just if you want any questions if we're going to get any questions, please have them ready, because we'll finish promptly at past.
I won't, because I think this clip was about 5 minutes long. So, but if you get a chance to watch Hollington Drive, it's still on ITV Hub, even if you don't watch all 4 episodes, watch episode 2 for intercutting. So what I was talking to you about, all the intercutting we did, there was lots of it in episode 2, and that wasn't in the script. That was everything that you see intercut in there was stuff that me and the editor talked about before I even shot it. So we haven't got time to do it now, but definitely if you're interested in breaking up storytelling and it not being non-linear, that's a good one to watch. But let's have a look at the trailer for The Drowning.
Tom's been gone 10 years now. What happened that day? There's nothing we can do to change it.
You're gonna think I'm mad. I've just seen our son. I followed him. Has the same hair. He has the scar.
He died, Jodie.
It's Tom. I know it.
Your son suffered a tragic accident and drowned.
They dredged the lake. He wasn't there.
10 years, nothing.
Until now.
I've made peace with it. You're digging it all back up again.
Has she gone completely mad?
He drowned. And he's not coming back.
You're lying. We were all at the lake that day. You're hiding something. I'm trying to prove what I already know. Why can't you see that he's your son?
No, he's not my son.
I think I'm just going to sit back and let you take him from me.
I can't imagine what you've been through.
I don't need you to. I just want to get him back.
Thank you. So that went out on Channel 5, but it's now available on Acorn TV. So that's the streamer, and it's on Sundance now at the moment in America and PBS. So yeah, that was my first telly where I, totally, I authored it. So it was really low budget. We shot it in Ireland. I couldn't bring any crew over. We had actors, but total people that I'd never worked with before in a country I'd never worked in before, and it was really brilliant. And you can't quite see it on that trailer, but the color palette for that and the costume, it was great. I had a really good production designer and a really good costume designer on that. I remember going into Sainsbury's the weekend before it, because it was shown over 4 nights. And literally, you could see the front of the magazines, because TV Times and Radio Times, and you could see the colour palette on there. And it just got so much attention, and everyone had heard about it. And I'm sure it's because the colour of it just stood out on the shelves in magazines and stuff, and the commercial that went out and the trailer that went out for it. And with Hollington Drive, what was interesting is that I had to go and shoot in Cardiff, and it was during lockdown. It was just as we were coming out of lockdown, and everything was kicking off at the same time, and it was near impossible to get production designers and costume designers, and they were getting offered loads of stuff in London, the ones that I wanted to work with, so they weren't going to come over to Wales, really. And so my costume designer, my production designer, was less experienced. And whilst I gave them mood boards, I've never done as many mood boards, but it just didn't translate. And I remember, same thing, was when I was looking at, in the supermarket the weekend before it came out, it was still on the front pages, but the images were all kind of different, and it didn't have a look about it. And it does if you watch the whole series, it kind of comes through, but not as strong as The Drowning.
as we've only have 5 minutes left, are there any burning questions from the audience? A hand went straight up down here. If we could get the mic down, and just so we know where the mic's going next. After that, who else had a question? And there's a question here, and then there's a couple over there. There's one over here. There's one down here. So we'll try and get if we could get sort of 1 minute per question max, then we might get through 5 of them.
When writing, when getting you have an idea for a project, do you write this write a script and give it to a proper screenwriter, or do you write the entire script yourself, or do you only pick? You just see a script and you go, "Oh, I want that one," and then you find the screenwriter.
So the only things I've ever written are my short films and my feature film. So it's only been in film and television. I wrote a thing about glamping that got optioned that didn't get made, and then as directing's taken over, I just haven't had the time to write anything for television, and you kind of need to sort of really get stimulated. So in television, scripts come in for me, and I read them and then see if I want to do them or not. So that's how it works. And when a script does come in, if you decide to do it, like the one I'm doing now, I'm working really closely with the writers to just getting those scripts to shape, because I suppose directors, you don't read a script, you see a script, and sometimes you see things that a writer doesn't see, or you make it more visual. So yeah. But if I was to write something now that I wanted to go on television, yeah, I'd send it out to production. Well, my agent would send it out to production companies and see who's interested, to see if I could get an option.
Thank you. Got a question over here.
Yeah, I have a question. So when you make a script for something, or you have case recce risk assessment, you already have to plan for that. Have you ever had to alter or change something? Have you ever had budget issues or scenes that you couldn't do, or you could do, but you didn't have the right people for it, and you had to swap to think, do something else?
Yeah, that happens all the time. So I know that these scripts coming in now will have explosions in them, car chases, all those kind of things, and there'll be some of that that'll be taken out because of budget. So yeah, you do sort of often, or night shoots, because night shoots cost a lot of money. So suddenly things were night and they're suddenly day. When I did Vera, there was a whole incident that happened on a big boat on the Tyne, and we had to wrap by 2:00. There were shots that I needed, I needed the bridge, the Millennium Bridge, to come up to get the boat underneath, and it was literally like a military procedure of timings. And then when I did the stunt guy falling into the water, I only had 20 minutes to do that because the tide changes. So there was things that we then had to go, right, we can't shoot that live, we're gonna have to pick that up in a tank. That's going to cost extra money. So yeah, that happens all the time. And things, you're right, on a risk assessment that's just too dangerous, that will be taken out or redone. Because every time somebody, even a punch, if somebody has to punch a wall, then a stunt coordinator needs to be there, and that's £1,000. So it's well, he didn't punch the wall, he just threw a cup at it or something, because you don't need a stunt person for that, because it doesn't hurt somebody if you're throwing a cup at a wall.
Just a question over here. Presumably, you sort of also talking about intimacy coordinators and coordinators for everything as well.
Every time there's any sort of, not so much kissing, but any sort of touchy-feely stuff, an intimacy coordinator needs to come, which costs time as well, because then you have to tell them what you want and they have to go and direct it, so all of that.
How would you keep yourself motivated?
In what way? On set?
Yeah. Do you ever get burnt out or...
You get tired, you definitely get tired, because shooting hours are long, and when you come home, even though you've prepped, you're thinking about the next day. And on a long, Hollington Drive was 9 weeks, so when you're doing those long days for 9 weeks and travelling home at the weekend to see your family, it does become really tiring. But it's just, you're on a ride, it's, I don't know, it's like you're going out for a run or a triathlon. You can't stop till it's finished. But yeah, you do get tired. But I think just the pure love of doing it and wanting to tell that story in the best way you can keeps you motivated. I think it's harder for actors. We were talking about this earlier, when you have to go in, do a scene, go and sit in a caravan for 3 hours, go back and do the next part of that scene. I think that is almost more tiring.
Can we just get last question from Laura? It's going to have to be, it is Laura, isn't it? You were waving, weren't you? It's going to have to be super quick.
Yeah, it was just sort of back on the short films thing. I think you mentioned the BFI funding earlier. How did you kind of get to the point where you can get that funding with your films?
Well, you have to submit it. So you put it in, but I would really recommend, I think that the reason why I've got any kind of funding is through networking, that they've met me as well. Because when you get thousands of applications in, yeah, you want to look for a good script, but if somebody kind of knows you and they've got a face and they know your personality, I think that that's really important. So with this, you know, when we did Papa in Nottingham, Penny introduced me to EM Media, and we knew each other. And then when I got Film London funding, I'd been to a lot of Film London events and introduced myself, so they kind of know who you are a little bit. I think that's really important, because for something to come in and then being blown away by a treatment or a script, it's got to be pretty amazing. And when you're sort of trying stuff out, it's sometimes not amazing on the page. So I think that, yeah, and it's just about applying all the time, finding out where you can get money to make short films and pay for them yourself. I paid for all my first ones myself.
If you want to get in with the BFI network, check out We Are Nexus, the Nexus cast and crew network that takes place here at Antenna once a month and in Birmingham as well. Good connection with the BFI network. We've got to wrap up. What you're leaving these students with, Carolina, like you're doing what a lot of them want to be doing. You're from this region. You're an inspiration to them. I mean, what's your writing on the wall? What's your parting shot?
Oh God, if I can do it at my age, you've got loads of time. Do you know what I mean? I just think you just gotta really want it, and just don't stop doing it. The only thing that will ever stop you not working in the industry is you. So if you just carry on doing it and making money. I mean, I did loads of jobs, teaching, waitressing, I was a fitness instructor, loads of things. Just try and earn money at the same time, or get another thing, another career going. If it's linked, it's great. You know, if you're teaching stuff that you know, it's brilliant. But don't stop doing it, and then it will happen, because you know it will. So just, if I can do it at my age, you can.
Fascinating stuff. Insightful, educational, inspirational. That is Carolina Giammetta. Round of applause for her, please. It's been brilliant, Carolina. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your industry week. Take every opportunity you can. You're very lucky. This is an amazing week for you.